Hello class, welcome to week 5. We're going to be looking this week at introductions, body paragraphs with a little bit of a focus on transitions. Okay, we're looking at conclusions. I'm going to talk a little bit more about cause and effect because your story for Facebook this week is what's your best time of the day. Alright, in introductions, if you'll turn with me in your quick access book to page 59. Okay, introductions are one of the few areas that people tend to have a hard time with. Either they write a great introduction and a somewhat sloppy conclusion, or their introduction they really don't know how to start their paper, etc. But their conclusions are very well written. Okay, so here's some strategies basically to help you to write an effective introduction that really hooks your reader in. Okay, think of your introduction kind of as the opening scene to a movie. If the opening sucks, you're not going to want to watch the rest of the movie. At least that's how I work. Maybe it's because I'm a guy. I'm not sure. Some strategy for capturing the reader's interest. If you look, chapter 11, page 59. Provide relevant background information about your topic. You may explore the history of it. You may explore what's been happening in recent news. You might even highlight one incident. One student wrote a paper on texting while driving, and he actually opened it up with a news article that had actually happened. Provide a brief, interesting anecdote or statistic that applies to your topic. Okay, that means provide brief, useful information, interesting information that your readers want to know more about. Ask a provocative question or two to lead in your topic. You know, you might say, have you ever been driving down the street and found somebody weaving all over the road? Maybe they're texting while driving. Use a quotation that relates closely to your topic. This really varies. I don't see this used as much. You can, but I don't see it used as much. Draw an analogy, something like what we saw in Am I Blue, to clarify your topic. Define a key term you use throughout your piece of writing. One controversial issue that people usually pick for research essays is the topic of abortion. Sometimes they'll say, we define abortion as this. But most people don't define abortion as whatever it may be. That is one way of doing it. Strategies to avoid on page 60. Making obvious statements like, I'm going to discuss this in this essay. Avoid that. We know it's an essay, and I'm hoping they're going to cover this topic. Otherwise your grade won't be very nice. Apologizing as in, I'm not sure I'm right, but here's what I think. I saw this one time, and the rest of the essay was pretty much written like that too. Using overworked expressions. Don't use those types of expressions like haste does make waste. Things like that. They are very, very heavily used in essays and they've kind of gone out. So you want to avoid that. Okay. Things to include into your introductions would be your thesis statement. You want to cover most, or if not all, of the main points that you're going to be using in your essay. Okay. Don't give too much detail in your opening introduction paragraph, but just enough to get your reader involved. Get them to want to read more. Okay, think of it like a hook. Now moving on to body paragraph, now you're going to show them, more information. You've got them hooked, now you want to keep them there. Okay, so those are introductions. Again, if you have any more questions on introductions or writing effective introductions, you can always email me. Body paragraphs are on page 62. There are a lot of strategies that you can use to develop body paragraphs. I'm just going to cover the ones that most make sense, I think, anyways. It really varies on the topic, okay? But when you're developing body paragraphs, especially if you are arguing for a point, you want to include the strongest main point first, okay? Most solid evidence, or at least most solid example of why you think your position is correct. And then, of course, you lead it down. Maybe your opinion would be the last topic, your own experience. I'm not saying that your experience has no worth. But when you're arguing for a position, when you're writing a research essay, oftentimes the researcher, myself, yourself, you want to avoid putting your personal opinion in there, if possible, okay? But one effective strategy is to include evidence. And we're going to be going over MLA in a little bit here. MLA in-text citations talk about how to put references in your essay. Now for your second essay, you're going to actually be using in-text citations, okay? I believe I'm going to cover that next week. Okay, MLA in-text citations does take up a couple of these, so we'll be looking at that next week. But it's a way of incorporating evidence into your essay, okay? Transitions. Transitions are critical, all right? When you have different paragraphs, you want to kind of connect them. You want to lead them into each other. It gives your essay some flow. It flows from one paragraph to the next. Using transitions like, on the other hand, to show the opposing viewpoint. In addition, you're adding more points to your topic. Moreover, okay, if you look with me on page 64, these are transitions that you want to use at the beginning, sometimes in the middle of your paragraph, okay. Addition, comparison, okay, concession, granted, naturally, of course, that means you're giving credit to the other side. You want to do that, okay? You don't just want to slam aside without at least acknowledging that they have some good ideas, some good points. Contrast, at the same time, certainly, despite the fact that emphasis, indeed, in fact, of course, result, as a result of, consequently. Summary, finally, in conclusion, hold that thought. I'm going to be talking about that in a second here. These transitions really help your essay. They really do. Okay, if you've ever read an essay that does not have any transitions at all, it's basically massive chunks of information that they're just throwing at you. You want to avoid that. Okay, make your essay flow, make your essay much more easier to read by using transition, whether it be in the beginning, middle, or end. Okay, I'm going to be actually watching for this in upcoming essays. All right. Conclusions on page 70. Okay, conclusions. How can I write effective concluding paragraphs? You're going to notice there's not much here, which saddens me deeply because conclusions are a very important part of your essay. If you do not have a good conclusion, your essay doesn't really feel finished. Okay? The concluding paragraph of an essay ends the entire essay. Wow, that was interesting. Your conclusion needs to follow logically from your thesis statement, body paragraphs. Never merely tack on a conclusion. That's one mistake I see a lot of students do. Use it to provide a sense of completion, a finishing touch that enhances the whole essay. The conclusion, if you look, you will see on the bottom of the page there's actually an example, which is not the greatest, but we'll leave that one alone. Quick reference 11.4 gives some strategies for writing concluding paragraphs. Use one of the strategies suggested for introductory paragraphs, but not the same one. Okay, give some variety. Okay. Ask the reader for awareness, action, or a similar outcome. Project into the future. Those there are probably the most important and probably most effective ways of concluding your essays. Okay, when you project into the future, okay, you're giving foresight into what could happen if, you know, current trends, let's say abortion, or even texting while driving. We have a ban on texting while driving now. I have a problem with it because pretty soon it's going to lead to the point where we aren't allowed to eat, aren't allowed to have coffee, or anything in our cars. While that may seem extreme, this is actually one essay that a student wrote, projected into the future. As much as we disagree with current driving habits, as much as we disagree with texting while driving, if we don't say something about this and do something about this, this could happen. Which ties right into cause and effect, which we'll get to in a second. We're asked the reader for awareness, action, or a similar outcome. Talks basically means, you know, having people get involved. You know, people don't get involved in current everyday issues. Things are going to happen that they didn't want, but because they didn't get involved when it was still being discussed, you know, there was no protest, there was no awareness of a problem. Okay. Strategies to avoid. Introducing new ideas or facts that belong in the body of the essay. I see this a lot. Sometimes a student will be writing a conclusion, suddenly come up with something and put it there, and this belongs somewhere else. Okay. Announcing what you have done. In this paper, I have explained Japanese animation. Of course, this goes back to an earlier example. We realize that. We understand that. Okay. Making absolute claims, and I see this a lot more than I really want to admit. and I do this a lot more than I want to admit. In this essay, I proved that anime deserves our attention. Avoid making declarative statements. You haven't proven anything. You may have raised awareness. You may have argued for a position, but you haven't proven anything. Okay? Apologizing. Even though I'm not an expert, I feel the points I've made are valid. You'll notice in Barbara Kingsolver's essay on Beauty and the Beast of Advertising, paragraph 18, was your question. Many of you said, yeah, this accurately sums up. Yes, it does, but it doesn't. She kind of says, well, this is not the problem. Advertisement's not the problem, but they add to the problem. Well, what has she been arguing about in her entire essay? That advertisements are a problem. In fact, that's probably one of the weakest links to her essay. Okay? So that wraps up that, okay? I don't expect everybody to come out with an A paper right away. Alright? These things take time to learn, develop. Writing is a process. Okay? I want to briefly talk about cause and effect. Cause and effect relationships, you will actually read about them this week in What's Your Best Time of the Day, which actually students find interesting because it actually makes them look at their own lives. Cause and effect talks about consequences. We don't like that word, do we? Especially in today's society. We don't like to think about consequences of our actions. But there are two types of consequences. There's good consequences and bad consequences. Okay, if you're watching these videos, if you're posting to Facebook, if you're putting in the effort in the class, if you're submitting the assignment, what's the consequence? Well, you may not have much of a summer, that may be one consequence, but another consequence is that you do well in the class and you've taken one more step towards your future goals. On the other hand, and this is a warning for students who have not submitted anything, if you haven't been attentive in class, you haven't been doing much of anything, and you're probably not even watching this, you're not doing well in class. You're getting an F in the class, or a very low grade. There are consequences to every decision that we make. Alright, sometimes they're obvious. Because I'm in school, I'm doing well, I'm going to have a successful career. Oftentimes people do not think about long-term consequences, okay? And this is where things become a problem, okay? Because each course you take, there are varying degrees of difficulty. And sometimes you might get halfway to your goal of earning your associates and be like, this is hard. I've been there. Stick it out. I promise you, it's well worth it. Okay, I started off in a community college as a student, and I survived, and so will you. Okay, but even long-term consequences of behaviors, smoking, drinking, driving fast on the highway. My pickup truck is called Leadfoot for a reason. You know, just not paying your electric bill, not paying this, not doing that. They all have long-term consequences that you may not be readily apparent right away. Okay. But there are consequences, okay? Because I didn't fix my brakes when my car was being serviced last time, and it could have saved me money if I had done it at that time, now I have to shell out another $800, okay? Because I've been sick, I haven't been able to get the classes on time. At the end of the semester, I found out I failed the class. I was supposed to graduate on this date, now I have to graduate on this date. Understand, you know, there are some consequences you just can't help. I get that, okay? When it comes to what's your best time of the day, this is actually an interesting essay. It talks about cycles and systems by which people function and operate. How many of you are night owls? How many of you are morning people? I can find myself up at 1 in the morning, or I can find myself up at 7 in the morning. I'm pretty much non-functioning either way. But this is an interesting essay to watch, to read, and think about your own life, okay? What does this say about you, okay? Some of you who have been in the military, doesn't matter if you're a morning person or not, when, you know, you were scheduled to get up and go to bed, that was it. I get that. But now that you're living a civilian life, you know, what changes have you seen, okay? It actually gives some strategies even for students. What their best time of the day is, what they should be doing at what time. One of the most fascinating things for me, which, yes, as a teacher I learned something. Burning the midnight oil is actually the most ineffective way to study, okay? And this essay actually talks about that. And in fact, after I read that, while I was still going for my doctoral course, I actually stopped doing that and found myself actually performing better. So this essay may surprise you. It really will. I really think so. Okay. So introduction, body paragraphs, conclusions, cause and effect. What I'm going to be going over on Friday, we're going to start going over a little bit more on MLA. I may just decide to do another announcement like this instead of me sitting on my computer upstairs in my kitchen, because this can be one of those topics that really confuse people. Okay, we will be using MLA, Modern Language Association, for this particular class. Maybe when you go for nursing, your teacher might have you do something else. I don't have time, unfortunately, to cover APA, Chicago, Caribbean. I actually have to use APA formatting for my own doctoral classes. Okay, so Friday you should expect to see an announcement on MLA formatting. So I will see everybody on Facebook. Please keep that up. You guys have been doing very well on there. Take care.